Jannik Sinner walked into the US Open press conference expecting the usual questions about preparation, form, and his chances of lifting the trophy. What nobody expected was for his comments to light a firestorm across the tennis world. When asked about the pressures and challenges he has faced in recent months, Sinner made a statement that many felt crossed a line. He spoke about players who play the victim card whenever things don't go their way, suggesting that some of his peers blame injuries, schedules, or media scrutiny instead of taking responsibility for their performances. It was the kind of blunt honesty that can either be admired or condemned, and in this case, the reaction was swift and fierce. Almost immediately, social media erupted. Fans, commentators, and even some fellow players accused Sinner of being insensitive, dismissive, and arrogant. The phrase, victim card, trended online, with thousands of people weighing in. Some agreed with him, praising his no-nonsense approach and saying he was right to call out the excuses that often flood post-match interviews. But many more felt his choice of words was cruel, especially in a sport where mental health, injuries, and relentless travel schedules take such a heavy toll on players. Sinner, who is usually known for his calm, composed, and almost robotic demeanor on the court, suddenly found himself painted as the villain in the run-up to the US Open. Fans who had always admired his quiet discipline were shocked. "I can't believe he said that," one user wrote on X. Another added, "This is the worst possible timing. Right before the US Open, and he chooses to mock struggling players." The backlash only grew as journalists replayed his words and highlighted the fact that tennis is filled with stories of athletes overcoming personal battles, from injuries to mental health struggles. To many, his comment felt like it erased that reality. But to fully understand why this blew up the way it did, you have to look at the timing. The US Open is not just another tournament. It's the final Grand Slam of the year, and it often carries more emotion and pressure than any other event. Players arrive exhausted after a long season. They're fighting fatigue, fighting injuries, and for many, fighting the voices of doubt in their own heads. For Sinner to stand there and call out players for playing the victim card felt like a slap in the face to those who had been open about their struggles. Among the names quietly mentioned in the fallout were Emma Raducanu, who just days earlier had spoken about her difficult 4-year journey with injuries, and Rafael Nadal, who has been candid about playing through pain. Even Novak Djokovic has openly shared the sacrifices and mental hurdles he's faced throughout his career. To critics, Sinner's comments seemed to dismiss all of that, reducing very real challenges to nothing more than excuses. At the same time, Sinner's defenders argued that he was being brutally honest in a sport that often hides behind cliches. They said he was sending a message about accountability, about refusing to let setbacks define you. They pointed out that Sinner himself has faced injuries and dips in form, yet rarely used them as a shield. For them, his words were a reminder that excuses don't win Grand Slams, hard work does. Still, the majority reaction was overwhelmingly negative. Headlines began to frame him as out of touch, insensitive, and even disrespectful. Tennis writers questioned if this would affect his reception from the New York crowd, a notoriously passionate and vocal fan base that loves a hero but has little patience for arrogance. The possibility of him being booed or heckled was suddenly very real. What made the situation even more dramatic was Sinner's body language during the press conference. He didn't smirk, didn't backtrack, and didn't soften his tone. He said it flatly, as though it was simply the truth. That lack of hesitation made it sting even more for those listening. It wasn't a slip of the tongue, it was intentional. As the story gained momentum, players were asked for their thoughts. Some dodged the question, not wanting to get involved, while others hinted that they disagreed. One veteran player reportedly said off the record, "He's young. He doesn't understand yet. Give him time." Another said, "We've all felt the pressure. It's not fair to call that playing the victim." For Sinner, the coming days at the US Open will be crucial. If he plays well and goes deep in the tournament, the controversy may fade into the background, remembered as just another pre-tournament distraction. But if he stumbles early, those comments could come back to haunt him, painted as the arrogance that preceded a fall. The irony of all this is that Jannik Sinner has built his career on resilience. He came from a small village in Italy, switched from skiing to tennis, and rose through the ranks with remarkable speed. His work ethic is undeniable, and his quiet intensity on court has earned him the nickname of being almost machine-like. That's why this controversy feels so out of character, because he's always been seen as respectful, humble, and focused on his game. One comment, however, has reminded everyone how quickly reputations can shift in the spotlight. The New York crowd, known for embracing drama, will almost certainly have its say when Sinner steps onto court. Will they cheer him as the fearless young star unafraid to speak his mind, or will they jeer him for dismissing the struggles of others? Either way, the eyes of the tennis world will be watching closely. This controversy has turned Sinner's U.S. Open campaign into more than just a tournament run. It's now a test of his character, his resilience under scrutiny, and his ability to block out the noise. Because while his words may have been aimed at others, the pressure is now firmly on his own shoulders. Can he back up his blunt honesty with performances that silence the critics? Or will this become a chapter in his career that fans never forget for all the wrong reasons? What is clear is that Jannik Sinner has ignited a conversation bigger than just tennis. His comments touched nerves about accountability, mental health, and the expectations placed on athletes. And while some will defend his stance, the overwhelming backlash shows just how much weight words can carry in today's game. For a player chasing his first U.S. Open title, this is not the storyline he wanted heading into New York. But it's the one he now has to live with. And as he takes the court under the lights of Arthur Ashe Stadium, every step, every point, every gesture will be magnified. Because in the eyes of many, he's no longer just Jannik Sinner, the rising star. He's the player who told others to stop playing the victim. And whether he meant it as a challenge or a criticism, it's a label that will follow him throughout this tournament. Would you like me to now create a 10 out of 10 clickbait thumbnail prompt to perfectly match the script's drama and emotion?